All right. All over the pledge, the agenda. Anybody have any, with the agenda that's been published, is there any changes to the agenda? No, I see a no shaken. I'm not hearing any. We're going to move forward with the agenda as published. Okay. I'll take that by consent. All right. I don't see anybody. You didn't have any visitor requests?
Nope.
So we have none of those. So we move into reports, and the first is superintendent's report.
All right, for my report, we got extended in the summer food service program through August 30th. So we'll continue to provide weekly meals. There's a ton of bread in the hallway right now. It's going out tomorrow. So children 0 to 18, and so they're doing it the same way they've been doing it. And we have workers and staff and transportation and all of that working. So that's been really good. We've had a lot of positive experiences with that and positive feedback. I left it on the printer. Planning for this fall is taking place. We had some MDE and MDH conference calls on June 18th. On June 23rd, the exec committee met, and we talked about the 3 required plans for fall 2020-2021. Distance learning, hybrid, full in-person. The final guidance from MDE is well known, is supposed to come out on or before July 27th. And then we'll have the cabinet get together with those plans. They're already working on different plans and ideas and thoughts. I just sent them all the guidance from MDE and MDH, and they're working on those at this time, and just coming up with lots of different ideas. And our goal that week of July 27th is to get all those plans and meld them together to make them Becker. So they fit Becker. And we're trying to incorporate lots of different thoughts and ideas. We just found out we can email a commissioner with questions, and one of the questions was, how do you figure out 50% capacity, for example? And we're using the state fire marshal's numbers, which is really good for us because we have some rooms like the TLC here that we can use and put more kids in there. We could fit a whole classroom or 2 classrooms even in here and split it in half. And we're going to look to try to be creative that way so we can have as many kids on campus as possible, but using our other MDH guidance to make sure we're keeping them 6 feet apart and following all those types of things. So lots of different ideas. We have lots of those. We'll get some feedback from the community that week of July 27th once we know what the governor or MDE tells us we're going to be doing. And if it's a local decision, we'll make a local decision, but we'll have all those plans well in place, and hopefully we'll have them finalized by the August 3rd meeting for you guys to approve. But we'll start getting those out to the public as soon as we hear from MDE.
Have we done any surveys of our school district people that we could, get their feeling on whether or not they want their kids to come into school?
We talked about that as an exec meeting. So we have surveys from last spring that we had, not necessarily if they're comfortable coming back to school or not, wasn't on there, but we talked about that as an exec meeting, as an exec group. And we determined that we would wait until the guidance comes out, because a decision that we make, 2 weeks ago somebody's thoughts might be different than they are today from 2 weeks from now. But the closer we get to that date, is when we wanted to have a survey developed, and we want to send something out on that 27th as soon as we know what the decision is, because then people can use that to guide their answer. Because, like I said, that people's minds and thoughts change based on where they are in this point in time. So the closer we can
just like we did with graduation, right? We waited until their guidance came out, and then we fit what we could within that kind of guidance, and stay focused on what we can do and not worry about what they tell us we can't do.
Yep, very similar to that. And waiting as long as we can with a drop dead date of July 27th. Once we know that, we'll create the survey before then and have that go out as soon as after that as possible, and then we can make our plans based on that. One of the things that we have, so we have 4 key areas in each building, or each, the elementaries together, primary and intermediate are going to do very similar things, middle school and high school. But we talk about learning, we talk about safety, we talk about choices, and we talk about their social emotional well-being are the 4 key things that the guidance from the MDE came out with, and that we have in every single one of our thoughts and things. And then we try to think from different perspectives, family, staff, students, of course, and all of those. So trying to use that to guide us with what the guidance we have right now, which is, it's there. We have what we have, and we deal with that. So the MSBA summer seminar is set to take place in early August. I believe that was the one I printed, and I left it on the printer, but there was an email that came out from MSBA this week, I believe, and the conference is going to be held virtually for school board members. And it's going to take place, I believe, 3 different nights. August 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on each of these nights, August 5th, August 12th, and August 19th. If you're interested in those, let Angel or myself know, and we'll get you signed up for those. And then the recordings will be available also if you sign up and you can't attend 6 to 8 p.m. on those nights, the Wednesday nights in August. They're available Thursday morning, the next morning, from 9 a.m. at 9 a.m. and at 10:05 a.m. So, but you should have gotten an email on that from MSBA. That's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
None.
Are there any committee reports?
There should be finance, but Jason's the only one.
Cover that. Finance committee met, and the results of our conversation are in the board pack, and the changes to the fee structure for school board member pay. We've trying to save the administrative burden of recording and sending all our hours in and meetings we go to and everything to the finance team, and just took an average cut across what everybody's been paid over the last year or two and picked an average number, and that's what's in the packages. So going forward, board members will be paid a straight fee with a little bit more to the chair and the clerk because of their extra duties.
Right, that's in line with what we currently do, right? We pay a little bit more to the chair and the clerk.
Mark, is that in the packet somewhere?
It is.
It's in the new fee schedule.
Are you finding it, Aaron, all right?
No.
So item 3F. We're talking.
Page 182 in the packet.
Okay. All right.
And so it's right at the bottom of page 1.
Yep.
Talks about it being an annual stipend instead of what we do right now is a per meeting stipend.
Okay.
And so this would be paid out every 6 months, but as an annual total amount. So instead of having to keep track of how many meetings you've attended and all that kind of stuff, it will just simply be paid out as an annual stipend.
And then just an update, individual contracts.
Yeah, I had those 2 things on.
You got 'em?
So,
Okay.
Per the grievance that we settled, we talked about if there was an insurance discussion to be had, that we would have that and that go to the certified negotiations committee. So we commit that to that, and then the individual contracts we know are up for discussion this year. And individual contracts committee will take those on once the initial proposals are put forth.
Yep.
So those will be in upcoming board meetings.
And then do we want to talk about a facility committee too?
Yes. I haven't. I don't think I received anything. Did you receive people asking to be on the facilities
I didn't know.
planning committee? There's only 4 of us here. Do you guys have a desire to be on the facilities planning committee that would work with ICS through they give us those 4 different proposals and try to figure out which one's the right one for us and that kind of stuff?
I would, if nobody else is interested, I'll do it.
And I was on the last building, the planning committee. I'm glad to participate again. So maybe myself and Aaron, Lori, I think I know where both of you guys are at. Your terms are up at the end of this year. And so I think for now, we'll just have myself and Aaron be appointed to that committee.
You have our full support.
Objection. All right, moving on to the consent agenda.
I'd like to pull the handbook discussion out of there, please.
Okay, so that's 3 Echo,
And I would like to pull 3F.
3F is the fees. And I hate to do this, but we're gonna have to talk, we have to talk about 3C, the first as well. So C, E, and F have been pulled for a separate discussion. Any other ones? Ask for a motion with the consent agenda, removing C, E, and F.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second by Aaron. Okay, all in favor, and aye.
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 Well,
Yeah,
roll call.
I forgot I have to roll call. So first, myself, Mark is aye. Aaron,
Aye.
no Connie. So Jason,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
okay, that passes unanimously. All right, so we'll start with item 3C. I asked Paul, I think there was some conversation or at least some feedback to you, Jeremy, and you put out in your superintendent update talking about one of the long-term sub?
Long-term
position?
sub, yep.
We're hiring a teacher that is the wife of the principal at
Yes.
the intermediate school.
Intermediate, yep. 3rd grade, long-term sub.
And so I just want to talk about it from transparency. So I'll move that we actually accept the personnel changes. And can I get a second, and then we can have discussion?
I'll second.
Okay, Aaron, seconds. So Jeremy, I'll give you the floor to kind of explain what that's about and trying to establish transparency there.
Yeah, and it's always a touchy thing when you've got spouses, just like Ryan, he's not here, but when he abstains from votes that affect his wife or things like that. And so in this situation, we knew it was there. Mr. Boyer, the principal's wife, applied for the 3rd grade long-term sub position, applied for other positions as well, and was selected as the candidate. The interview committee consisted of Mr. Smith, Mike Smith, Minda Anderson, and so Mr. Boyer was not a part of that. And then the 3rd grade team was all asked to be on it. I guess one of them was not on it, was not able to make it. And so, so she was chosen as the candidate and then recommended on the personnel report. the next piece of that is, if that gets approved, is who gets to evaluate her. And that's, again, a weird situation. And speaking with other admin, we haven't decided exactly who's going to, but it won't be Mr. Boyer evaluating his wife. Most likely be Miss Anderson, Minda Anderson. And so those are the types of things that we've tried to get into that, and transparency and things like that. So I also spoke with the BEA on some of that. Just they've had some conversations with me, and just making sure we're all on the same page and things too.
So we did look at our policies, and we don't have any policies that prohibit this kind of a situation. Right?
Yes. Yep.
So we're not violating any of the district policies.
No, and I tried to find statute, and I also tried to reach out to the attorney who's on vacation now. But there are court cases based on nepotism and also based on discrimination of family members, both sides. And even if you have a policy, it's a very touchy thing. And I think the statute reads that certain sizes of, I don't know if it's schools or cities, and that's why I want to get clarification from the attorney, but certain sizes, this is going to happen. You know, if you're in a smaller town, there's, it's not uncommon for there to be multiple people from the same family in the same school. And so this is a little bit different with the principal and teacher relationship. But
well, I think it helps a little bit knowing that her coworkers were part of the interview team and still chose her, that they understand that, and they said that that's an okay thing that they can live with.
Yep.
As part of being part of the interview team. I think in any situation where you have, a direct report, being a family member, much less a spouse, that it's a difficult situation you can get yourself into. And I think, Jeremy, you and Minda and the rest of the team, we rely heavily on you to ensure that there's nothing that's going to get us in trouble, so to speak.
Yeah. And it is a 1-year long-term sub. So, I assume she'll apply next year if they're both around, and may get a different position in a different building as well.
But that position can only last for the year.
For 1 year, yeah.
Questions from other board members? All right.
I think you've answered the question about who would evaluate performance, and that's consistent with what I see in my area of work, how we handle that situation. One other question comes up is one member is a represented union person, the other is not. So I'm not sure how that plays into it when we get into union discussions, how much the principals actually weigh into that stuff. So,
Yeah. And that's more of a school board decision, I guess, too. So that I don't think we poll the principals and say, what do we want to change in a teacher contract? I've not had experience
We
with
have
that.
not in the past.
Yeah. I don't think that happens.
Principals haven't even been present or been part of the discussion, as far as I know.
Yeah.
But that's why I say it's the reporting and review, in essence, the review part I can understand, and that seems to be appropriately accommodated. I think we're going to have to be very careful and watch out about, because that's the administration of that building, to make sure that team understands that if they have a problem, that there's an outlet for them to go, in essence, around Mr. Boyer, so that they can make the appropriate reporting if necessary.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that would be very uncomfortable if I'm talking about somebody's spouse to that person, right?
Yeah. And I think Dan Olson, he's one of the that team is on here, and I would assume they would have that conversation with their team as well, knowing that that's an option. And so,
well, I guess that's part of what I'm saying, Jeremy, is I don't want to assume that anything is happening.
No.
We are going to be very proactive about this. that's why I wanted to address it from a transparency standpoint, and that you guys have the direct conversation with that team in understanding there are different ways to do this, and make sure that there's no favoritism, there's no, all of that kind of stuff. Okay. It's not an easy situation to be put into. I would prefer that we didn't, but we're in this spot now. We're not gonna, I don't think we're not the type of board that wants to question all of the hiring decisions and the decisions you guys are making. We're just trying to be proactive and being transparent. And again, that team understands all of this, all of those types of things.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Any questions?
I guess I have a question. This is Lori. What have we done to maybe make the situation, this is a year position, to just put somebody else in that spot and switch buildings around with another staff member from either the primary, or I'm just uncomfortable with this situation. I will just speak up to that. It does not, to me, feel like the right thing to do. It puts a lot of people in a lot of compromised possible situations in the future, especially since her husband is the principal. There just, to me, there has to be something else that can be done. This just seems not like the appropriate thing to do.
Well, and she was interviewed for the long-term sub position and given that position, so that they were, they obviously knew who she was when they interviewed her as well. With the committee was Minda, Mike Smith, and that third grade team, and so they understood part of that as well. They knew the relationship that was there. There is right of assignment, but then you're frustrating somebody else, and then it's like saying, well, it may be the appearance of because that's his spouse, she's getting the position that she really wants, and again, it's a long-term sub position. So I know that's not a very good answer for you, Lori.
I'm just really, I'm uncomfortable with it, and it just.
But I think, like Mark was, if we can be upfront and forward with the team and let them know that they're outlets, we have somebody else evaluating her, and then
we're already doing something different than we normally do, and so that feels really uncomfortable, and it'd be hard to speak up for anyone, even if any of the interviewing team or her team were uncomfortable with it. It already is hard to talk about. I would assume that it's a difficult situation, no matter how you look at it.
I agree with you, Lori, as far as it's a difficult situation for all involved, especially the teachers of that school, because you're always going to feel like you're being watched, or what you say may get back to your supervisor. I kind of like the idea see if there's anybody from the primary that would rather teach third grade and just make a swap for the year. I don't know how to do that. On the flip side is, I guess, if there's third grade teachers that were in an interview process, and she rose to the top, that's also speaking for that group of teachers.
Yeah, and it does get touchy because she's got some experience and really good recommendations, and obviously interviewed fine, and so she's qualified. So that puts, and I get it's a weird situation, but we have to do things that we can control to minimize any issues that could come up or arise.
So, I mean, I have some experience with this. I have several clients that are basically family-owned companies. So about half of the employees in some of the companies I go to are one family. And they have some hard discussions and some hard things that go on. I understand that. I think, again, the key is being in a proactive standpoint. Not simply, some of the things is not waiting for people to come and voice concerns, but it probably will take, Minda or yourself, somebody going over there and say, hey, one-on-one or one on a couple of those people over there saying, hey, I just want to check in and make sure that there isn't anything that needs to be said. Those types of proactive responses, I think, is kind of some of the things that I would expect, that you would have those proactive conversations, not waiting for somebody to come and tell you that there's a problem, but have that proactive stance of going out and asking if there's any issues, making sure that they have the ample opportunity for confidential, private conversations to be had. I mean, guys, it's hard to not have a dinner conversation about what's going on at work, right? I understand it's a hard thing. It's hard for Mr. and Mrs. Boyer. It's all of these things it's less than ideal. On the flip side, we also, because of the people that were involved in the interview and the choices that they made, I think we have to rely that they made the choice that was best for the school. To some extent. And we don't have any policies that prohibit this, so from a policy governance standpoint, they're still within line. They've made a reasonable interpretation. I've been on my soliloquy. I'll let you guys talk. Lori, I see you still have your hand up. I don't know if you want to talk or.
I just left it up. Sorry.
Oh, that's right. Go ahead, Lori.
I'm just still very uncomfortable with it, and to me there has to be another compromise that is possible for a short-term or long-term sub. I mean, it puts people in a position. I think it's really hard and it's complicated. And there were 4 candidates that were part of that interview, and it's so 4 of them had qualifications to interview. It didn't. I'm sure there weren't just 4 people that applied for the position. So, but nonetheless, I mean, switching somebody from one building to another just to allow for this to happen, to me, would be a much better. It puts everybody in a better place.
I just don't know if you're taking somebody and putting them in a one-year position, then back to where they're going. That I don't know if that's good for continuity either with their teams.
Sure, I understand that.
And they don't know her. I mean, it's primary school. I don't know if they know her, I guess, but
we've done looping before, so a teacher will go up a grade or down, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that wouldn't be unprecedented. This would be a building swap, so there's some of those things. Like that teacher couldn't stay in the same classroom; they'd have to switch classrooms and all like that. I mean, there's a lot to that too.
And the team didn't pick them,
right?
Or they didn't apply for it, so they don't want it,
right?
I would assume. So, yeah. So I think it's weird. I think we can be proactive, and like Mark was saying, and just make sure we're on top of that and anticipate anything that could go wrong if anything goes wrong.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I would just like to say, I hear exactly what Lori's saying, and I've already made my comments. But I believe that the administration has done their due diligence and they've included BEA in the conversations. And I think at this point, if you force somebody to move out of a position to move her out of the building into a different building, then you're going to create issues that aren't there. So I just want the administration to be very observant and understanding that when you have the spouse of an administrator in the building, it really changes the dynamics of conversations and things like that in the lounge or just around the school.
Yeah.
Any other? All right, hearing none, we can vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye in the roll call. Mark, aye. Aaron,
Aye.
can't hear you. Jason,
Aye.
Lori, can you unmute yourself and? Lori, your vote?
I'm going to abstain.
So the motion passes. And that personnel report is adopted. All right, the next item was item F, which was the fee schedule. And Aaron, I believe you were the one that asked that that be pulled.
Are we skipping over E?
Oh, I'm sorry. E is the handbooks. That's right. Jason, you were the one that asked E to be pulled.
All right. I just, I'm kind of torn. I don't see why the school board has to review the handbooks, but we do. So I gave them my due diligence. If I was a parent with more than one student in more than one building, I would be very frustrated by the differences between these handbooks. And I've been on the board 8 years. I've brought it up at least 3 times. I'd really like us to see us fix this. I'm okay with the board approving based on content, but just a couple of notes. There's 3 different versions of calendars. There's multiple versions of table of contents, multiple different formats of staff directories. Some have email addresses, some don't. Some have phone numbers and room numbers. Some just list names. Some of the basics should be consistent from directory to directory, and I'd ask that the principals take some time to get together and do that. But then there's the quality issues. Like if you look at the primary one, just simple things like the school supply list, the kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, 3 different pages. All 3 pages have different fonts, different font sizes. It just doesn't look like a quality document that represents the excellence we would expect of our students, let alone our staff producing a document like this. As far as branding goes for the school, some of the images on the cover pages of a couple of the buildings directories are kind of fuzzy compared to the high school. For some reason has a very crisp, clean logo for the school district. I work somewhere that's extremely sensitive to branding. It's just another example of putting our best foot forward in what we put to the public. And then simple things like policies and rules. Our attendance policy is different in each handbook. That shouldn't be the case. Policies and rules should adhere to district, building to building. Now, I recognize that some buildings will have to add policies. For instance, we don't expect our kindergarten to have a parking policy, but the high school does. But there are a number of things that should be the same. So I will motion to approve based on content, but I would ask that the administrative staff and executive team take a look at the quality of what we're putting in front of our community.
Oh, and they did work together on those. The elementary did, and then the middle school, high school worked together on theirs. I'll go through and I'll show them your points and all of those, and I do agree. I know you brought it up last year, so at least 2 years in a row. So,
It's slowly getting better. I will give them credit. There's clear examples where I can see, and now that you said they worked in two pairs, I can see some of that, and now I understand why some of it's same between a couple of the buildings. But yeah, it's just we can do better.
All right, looking for a second on Jason's motion.
I will second.
Aaron. So just other discussion? And I mean, I was the one that last year kind of pushed on these things, and we actually, if you recall, did a similar thing where we approved the idea and the general content with an ask that this be administratively taken care of and improved. I can't reiterate more that this is a direct reflection on the 4 principals, the 3 assistant principals, the dean of students, the curriculum director, and yourself, that we have this issue. So again, I think Jason's points are all well taken, and that administratively we need this taken care of. Okay. Okay. Ask for the vote. Unless there's other discussion. Aye. Aaron.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Jason.
I
Motion passes. All right. So now we're up to item 3F. Aaron.
I would just like to talk about the board pay. I understand at Kevin's point, and not having to send out the forms and chase forms down in order for us to get reimbursed for our board duties. I guess I'd like to know, going off the numbers that are projected for us tonight, is that above or below what we typically pay out for board members?
Kevin, you got
can.
back to that, otherwise, or Jason can too.
And Jason talked to that earlier.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the package from our meeting.
Okay, and while you're doing that, I'm just going to elaborate a little bit. Under the current situation, if we miss 2 or 3 meetings, we don't get paid for those. Under the new language, we would be paid a stipend for the year across the board. So I see this as a potential raise, and I think given our current circumstances in Becker, we should not be looking to spend any more money than we currently do.
As I recall, the total came out to be about the same, and it was under the budgeted amount. But that might have changed. I'm sorry, I just can't find the meeting minutes from when we met to discuss that. The budgeted amount was $7,200 a year, I think.
Total?
Yeah.
Well, if we pay everybody at $1,600, that'd be $9,600 for the year right there.
Kevin, are you on? Is he-
No, he's not muted. He just, now he muted himself. Go ahead, Kevin. Maybe
Microphone might be
the
on.
microphone on your side is muted. You're unmuted on the Zoom meeting. We're not hearing you, Kevin.
I don't know. The range was was a little bit different. One of the things that Kevin and I talked about before we get to the finance committee on this was there is a pretty big range. I think Ryan's, for example, Ryan's one that he's turning in, I think today or whatever he's already turned in. The most recent one was 1,800. Because sometimes we have more meetings than typically planned. We've had the grievance meetings, we've had some special meetings because of COVID and things like that as well. And in talking to Kevin, we just talked about how those typically balance out. And some years you do have negotiations, and sometimes there's a lot of meetings involved in that. And typically the same people are on those committees, so then we have some consistency, and that also can get broken out into those multiple years, or if you might get overpaid one year and underpaid the next year, based on what you're making now. But the numbers were very close. We budget 7,500. Some of you don't take pay, and so that's included in that budgeted amount. So we don't come in that much under budget because some people don't take pay for what they're doing here. And so Kevin factored in all the way back to Brian Olson, and then all 6 of you, and that's kind of what the average came out to be. And then we added I think is it 100 or 150 for the clerk and 250, I think, for the chair, on there to get those amounts.
I guess my big question then would be, is this going to save us money or cost us money?
This would save us money this year. I think it's give and take. There's some years it's going to be above and below. It's an average of, a number of years, so it's going to be above and below. I do, you brought up the point earlier of if you miss meetings and things like that, and probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 out of 10 schools use a stipend amount like that. And typically in the situations where if people are missing lots of meetings and the board chair or somebody needs to step up and say something to those people, because you do have a duty to be present as much as possible, and the duty of a board member. And so the number is an average. And I guess, like I said, if it was this year, if we would have done it for this last 6 months here, we'd be under budget. If you did it last year, you'd probably be a little over budget. It gives and give and take, I guess. It does save time from Kevin's standpoint, at least, of reaching out to some of you and getting those in and making sure they're coming in and stuff like that. I don't know if Kevin, he's not working yet, it looks like. So if you had anything to add. It would be very close to our budgeted amount each year. Oh,
I was calling it wrong.
yeah, Kevin just said on my text, it's going to save some years and be more in some years. Essentially what I just said. So it's more of the ease, and so Kevin doesn't have to send emails, and you guys don't have to track all of that. And you get the same answer in the end.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I can add is that under our current pay structure, the board chair and the board clerk get a little bit more than the rest of the board members. This would be about, I think, or whatever you said the difference is probably about the difference that they get. That's because of having to come in and set the agenda, having to come in and sign some additional documents and those types of things that the chair and the clerk get that little bit extra. And that's very typical of almost all boards.
I think all school boards
that I know of. And I don't think those amounts are out of line. So we do need a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to call item 3F
Okay, so that's on a motion to approve item 3. Is there a second?
Oh, I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I do want to add in there that no other fees were changed on this
schedule?
fee schedule, so. A lot of them were changed last year, from what it sounds like.
All right, so do a roll call vote. Mark, aye. Aaron,
No.
Lori,
No.
Jason,
Well, since I brought it forward, I'm going to say aye.
motion fails. And so we would revert back to last year's schedule as is. And if there's a future board meeting where there's a different proposal or different discussion, then we can certainly entertain that. But that motion fails. Okay, so we keep the same schedule as what we've had last year.
Okay.
All right. We are on to the July gifts. Can I get a motion to accept the gifts as presented? Okay, I'll make.
A motion.
Okay, and and Jason, I'll take yours as a second.
Understand.
Okay. For discussion, I want to just a couple of particular call-outs. One, the Becker Lions, I think we have to, again, thank them for all of the help that they did with graduation, in the video screen, the other, all these graduation costs, the amount of money that they put into our graduation, I think is something that we have to recognize the Lions as being a huge support of schools. The second one is, while I don't know what it costs Liberty Paper, but all of the paper products that they've provided to help us serve those lunches, you know, they make paper, but they don't make paper bags. So they're getting these from somewhere. I don't know where they're getting them from and that kind of stuff. But the amount of paper products that they brought us, again, it shows a huge step forward for a business in our community to support the schools like they're doing. I think it is those things to call out. Okay. Those are the couple things that I wanted to highlight. I don't know if anybody else has any other discussions there. I don't see any hands up. So hearing none, we can vote. This is Mark. Aye. Aaron.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes. On to the next item of business. All right, it's taking a second to reload everything now and get back here. So that's the gifts. All right, so we have the annual policy reviews, and Jeremy, I'm going to ask you if you can comment on this.
So these are the policies that are annually required to be reviewed. They're on MSBA's page. If you look under annual review policies, required annual review. I don't know if you guys have formally done this in the past, but I've always brought these ones forward and to the school board for approval. We didn't set them up as a first reading, second reading type of thing because they're just ones that we want to make sure that we're keeping in line and there were no substantive changes. They're all administrative type of changes that are on these. The only major change that was on one of them was adding spouse, the definition of spouse on their legal definition of that. So there were, again, just administrative type changes. Make sure we get the right names and things like that in there, as far as who do you go to if you have a Title IX complaint or a complaint of harassment and things like those. So just putting them out there, and then we shared a bulk of these. We share with new employees, and then we also are required to go through share them with students, some of them, and so that people are aware and post those and things like that. So they're annual review policies from MSBA, and some of them are in statute that way. And there are nothing major is on them, just some small administrative changes.
Do we need a motion to accept those reviews, or what are you asking for?
Yeah, a motion to accept the policies, so then we have something in writing that shows that we've reviewed them annually. On the policies themselves, we're going to have adopted is on all of them, and then revised, and then we'll put reviewed on there because there really were no changes to revise. So we'll just add a review spot on there.
Okay.
So we know that they're being done each year.
All right, so I need a motion to accept these policies as reviewed.
I'll motion.
Made by Lori.
I'll second.
Seconds. Okay. Discussion or comments or any of these draw your attention? Okay, hearing none, we can vote. I'll vote. So Mark is aye. Aaron?
Aye.
Aye.
Jason? I can't hear you.
Sorry. I knew it would get me at least once tonight. Aye.
Great. Thanks. That passes. All right. The next item on the agenda is a superintendent's review. I sent the inputs, the information about the committee, or from the cabinet members out to the board. My concern before we go into a closed session and go into a review, I want to state, publicly my concern that 1/3 of the board is not present at this time to do the board review. We aren't specifically held to do it right now. We could defer it to next month if we so chose. I guess my tendency, having talked to the 2 other board members, would be to defer it to next month unless any of the other board members feel that we need to do it now.
I would agree to defer to next month, August.
Jason, you okay with that?
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, so that agenda item will be deferred to August. With that,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Stop the recording.